Imagine waking to a cold so fierce it feels like the air itself is biting your skin, a darkness so deep you can't see your own hands, and a silence broken only by the creak of a cabin fighting to hold back a Wyoming winter at 35 below zero. This is the world of the Caldwell family in 1876, where every sunrise is a victory, and every spark in the stove is a lifeline. Welcome to History Orbit, where we unravel the raw, gripping stories of our ancestors' survival, pulling you into the heart of history's toughest battles against nature. Before we dive into the frozen frontier, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to join our journey through time, and drop a comment with your city and the time right now to let us know you ray with us. Today we're stepping into a log cabin on the Wyoming plains, where the Caldwells, James, Eliza, their teenage son Caleb, daughter Abigail, and younger siblings Lucy, Samuel, and infant Rosa locked in a daily dance with death to keep their fire alive and their family warm. This isn't just a story of survival, it's a masterclass in ingenuity where mud, moss, and sheer will turn a fragile shelter into a fortress against the cold. Let's step into their world, feel the sting of frost on our faces, and discover the forgotten science that kept them alive. The cabin is dark, the kind of dark that presses against your eyes, heavy and absolute, as Caleb, our 14-year-old narrator, stirs beneath a pile of quilts so thick they feel like armor. His breath clouds in the air, tiny crystals catching the faint glow of dying embers in the cast iron stove across the room. The cold is a living thing, sharp and relentless, creeping through the log walls, nipping at his nose and cheeks. The only parts of him exposed to the frigid air. It's 1876, and the Wyoming frontier doesn't forgive mistakes. One wrong move, a fire gone out, a bucket of water left to freeze. A gap in the wall unsealed could mean the family doesn't see dawn. Caleb lies still, listening to the soft breathing of his siblings. Lucy and Samuel, huddled together for warmth, their small bodies pressed close under shared blankets. Infant Rose, barely 2, is tucked against Eliza, their mother, her tiny form generating just enough heat to keep her safe through the night. Across the cabin, James, the father, is already moving, the creak of his bed frame cutting through the silence like a warning bell. He doesn't speak at first, just rises, his feet hitting the plank floor with a dull thud, the boards so cold they burn like ice against his bare soles. He's dressed in layers wool shirt, trousers, even socks, because on the frontier, you don't undress for bed in winter, you add more. Eliza, he whispers, his voice low but urgent, I need light. Caleb watches as his mother's shadow shifts, her hand reaching for the bedside table where a single candle and a box of matches wait. Precious as gold, the scratch of the match is sharp, a sound that seems to echo in the stillness, and for a moment, the tiny flame lights up Eliz's face, tired, resolute, with frost clinging to her eyelashes like delicate jewels. Damn cold, James mutters, kneeling by the stove, his breath a white plume in the dim light. He opens the stove door carefully, the hinges groaning under the strain of the cold, a sound that's both familiar and ominous, proof the metal hasn't cracked in the night. A broken stove would be a death sentence, a fact every frontier child learns early. Caleb holds his breath, watching his father's silhouette against the faint glow of the embers. Those embers are everything, life itself. If they've gone out, the family faces a crisis before the sun even rises. Still got some life, James says, relief softening his voice, hand me the kindling box. Caleb exhales, his heart easing, knowing the day can begin. This isn't just a morning routine, it's a ritual of survival, a sequence perfected through generations of trial and error where every movement matters. James doesn't toss wood into the stove carelessly, he builds a structure, arranging bone-dry pine splinters prepared weeks ago and stored near the stove, for this exact moment in a precise pattern that maximizes airflow, while ensuring the smallest pieces touch the glowing coals. Kindling's low, he says, glancing at Caleb, who's now sitting up, the cold air hitting his face like a slap. Caleb, you'll help cut more today. At 14, Caleb is old enough to share the burden of fire management, a task as critical as breathing. He nods, though the darkness hides it, knowing the kindling must be perfect to thick, and it won't catch to thin, and it'll burn out before igniting the larger logs. James leans close to the stove, his face inches from the coals, and blows gently, not in sharp puffs but in long, steady breaths, coaxing the embers back to life without scattering their heat. It's a skill he's spent years mastering, one Caleb is still learning, watching his father's every move with a mix of awe and responsibility. A small flame flickers, tentative at first, licking at the kindling, and James adds slightly larger pieces, angling them to form a miniature log cabin that draws air like a chimney. The fire grows, casting a warm glow across the cabin's interior, revealing the rough-hewn logs, the frost-glazed walls, and the family's meager possessions: a table, a few chairs, a chest of supplies, all arranged to capture every ounce of heat. "Abigail, check the water bucket," Eliza calls, her voice calm but firm, as she pulls a wool dress over her nightgown, never removing the layers beneath. Layers of survival, a lesson drilled into every frontier child. Abigail, 16 and quick, slides from her bed, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders as she moves to the corner where a wooden bucket sits. She taps it with a knuckle, the sound dull and solid. Frozen through, she reports, her voice tinged with resignation. "We'll melt snow again," Eliza says, her sigh barely audible as she rises, the bed creaking under her shifting weight. The younger children, Lucy, Samuel, and Rose, stay buried in their bedding, their shared body heat a precious resource. At 8, 6, and 2, they're kept in bed as long as possible to conserve warmth. "James, how's the temperature?" Eliza asks, her hands already busy sorting breakfast supplies. James doesn't need a thermometer, his body is his gauge, calibrated by decades on the frontier. "Must have hit 40 below last night," he says. "Coldest this winter." "Colder than that February storm?" Eliza asks, recalling a brutal cold snap that froze their well solid and killed a neighbor S-horse in its stall. "Not quite," James replies, "but we've got February ahead. The worst is coming." He adds larger sticks to the fire now, each placement deliberate, waiting patiently between additions to avoid smothering the fragile flames. This isn't about comfort, it's about life. The knowledge of how to nurse a fire from near-dead embers is worth more than any treasure on the frontier. "Caleb, time to get up," Eliza calls, her voice cutting through the growing warmth near the stove. "We need water." Caleb slides from under his quilts, the cold air hitting him like a fist. His fingers stiff as he reaches for his clothes. He pulls on a second pair of wool socks, hand-wear upon by Eliza from their own sheep's wool, the fibers rough but warm. Stepping onto the porch, the pre-dawn world is a study in contrast, stars blazing in a black sky, snow reflecting just enough light to guide him to the shed. His breath freezes instantly, icing his scarf, and he pulls it tighter, leaving only his eyes exposed. The shed door is frozen shut, requiring 3 hard shoves to crack the ice and swing it open. Inside, he grabs a wooden scoop, its metal edge gleaming faintly, and heads to a clean patch of snow at the clearing's edge. Far from the cabin where contamination might lurk, the snow squeaks under his boots, dry and powdery, yielding less water when melted. So he packs the bucket high, his fingers aching through his mittens after just minutes in the cold. Back in the cabin, the fire's warmth is spreading, the stove's metal sides pinging as they expand. "Good job," Eliza says, taking the snow bucket and placing it near the stove. "Careful not to let it steam and crack the iron. Now help your father with the logs." James is at the indoor woodpile, a meticulously organized stack of split logs, the result of months of work, trees felled in spring, seasoned through summer, and brought inside to stay dry. "Oak for the morning fire," he says, handing Caleb a heavy log. "Pines to fast, good for starting but not lasting. Hickories for overnight." Caleb nods, familiar with the hierarchy of wood: oak for steady heat, hickory for long coals, pine for quick flames. James selects 3 oak logs, each chosen for its grain and weight, indicators of moisture content. "We're not just building a fire, Caleb," he says, his voice low but firm. "We're building a system. A poorly built fire could waste wood or, worse, go out, letting the cabin freeze. By late afternoon, it'd be uninhabitable." Caleb feels the weight of this truth, his hands gripping the log as if it's a lifeline. The cabin is warming now, the frost on the walls catching the firelight, turning the room into a mosaic of ice and glow. Abigail sets up a small table near the stove, helping Eliza prepare breakfast cornmeal mush. maybe a drizzle of molasses if supplies hold, and coffee for the adults. The younger children stir, still bundled, their faces peeking from quilts. Lucy, 8, clutches the family dog, a shaggy mutt named Scout, whose warmth has kept her cozy through the night. My teeth hurt, Samuel whines, his 6-year-old voice muffled by blankets. Stay covered, Eliza replies, it'll warm soon. Rose, the baby, burrows deeper, her tiny form adapted to the rhythm of frontier winters. James places an oak log in the stove, his movements precise, ensuring it catches without disrupting the flames. Perfect, he murmurs, closing the door and adjusting the damper to control airflow. To open, and the fire burns to fast to closed, and it smothers, filling the cabin with smoke. Eliza places a pot of snow on the stove, its contents already slushing, alongside a coffee pot and a pan for mush. Every ounce of heat is used warming the cabin, cooking food, melting water. Caleb, check the windows, James says, his eyes on the fire. Caleb moves to each window, ensuring the rags stuffed in gaps are secure, the oiled paper intact, and the heavy quilts properly hung. At the east window, he pulls the quilt aside, revealing a faint dawn lightening the sky. Sun's coming, he reports. Good, James says, we've got wood to cut, and I'd rather not do it in the dark. The fire's heat now creates a visible boundary in the cabin. A wavering line where warm air meets cold, like an invisible wall. Eliza notices, calling Abigail to bring Rose to the warm side, keeping her feet covered. The toddler's pinched face relaxes as warmth envelops her. James, we're low on lamp oil, Eliza says, stirring the mush. If this cold holds, we'll be in the dark by next week. James nods, his face grim. I'll try for town before the next storm. But the sky's got that look. Every decision carries weight. Go to town and risk a storm, or stay and risk running out. Cut more wood or repair the chinking? Each choice could mean life or death. As breakfast nears, the cabin reaches a fragile warmth, maybe 45 degrees near the stove, still freezing by the walls. The family gathers, except James, who takes his bowl to check the animals, pulling on a fur-lined coat. The chickens might need to come inside, he says, stepping into a blast of Arctic air that cuts through the cabin's warmth. He closes the door fast. The rest eat quickly, no chatter, every bite a calculated fuel for survival. Caleb, help with the heated stones, Eliza says, her spoon scraping the bowl. Caleb selects for fist-sized stones from near the stove, using a rag to handle their heat. Eliza wraps each in cotton, then wool, then blanket scraps, tying them with twine. These go into children's beds, she says, one at the foot, under the quilts, not touching skin. Caleb places them carefully, knowing they'll create warm pockets lasting hours. James returns, carrying a crate of subdued chickens. It's bad out there, he says, setting them in a corner. Thermometer broke, glass shattered in the cold. Eliza looks up at the cow, shivering but alive. James says, I stuffed more hay round her. The well's frozen, so it's snow for water all week. This news lands. Heavy melting snow means more firewood, more strain on their dwindling supply. 8 days worth inside, maybe a week outside, James says, hanging his coat to let frost melt near the stove. We'll cut more today. No rest, no break, just the relentless work of staying alive. As Caleb pulls on his boots, ready to face the cold with his father, he glances at the window, the oiled paper glowing with dawn's first light, frost patterns sparkling like deadly art. A storm's brewing, James says, his eyes on the same window. I feel it in my bones. 6 hours, maybe, before it hits. 6 hours to cut wood, secure the animals, and prepare for a blizzard that could trap them for days. But as Caleb steps toward the door, his mind isn't on the storm, yet it is on the intricate dance of survival he is about to join, where every log, every spark, every choice builds the fragile bridge to another dawn. What he doesn't know is how this day will test not just their skills, but the very walls that hold the cold at bay, pulling him deeper into the secrets of the cabin's design. As Caleb steps toward the door, the dawn light filtering through the oiled paper window casts a pale glow across the cabin, illuminating the frost that clings to the log walls like a shimmering veil. The air inside feels warmer now, the stove's heat pushing back the cold, but it's a fragile victory, one that demands constant vigilance. James pulls on his heavy coat, his movements swift yet deliberate. every action a testament to years spent wrestling with Wyoming's merciless winters. "Caleb, bundle up," he says, his voice steady but carrying the weight of urgency. "We've got 6 hours, maybe less, before the storm hits, and we need enough wood to outlast it." Caleb nods, wrapping a wool scarf around his face, leaving only his eyes exposed to the biting air that awaits outside. Eliza, stirring the last of the cornmeal mush, glances up from the stove, her eyes meeting James's in a silent exchange that speaks of countless winters faced together. "Keep the fire steady," she says, handing him a small sack of pine shavings, the last of their kindling reserves. "We'll handle the cabin." James tucks the sack inside his coat, a precious resource that could mean the difference between a warm night and a frozen one. "Abigail, clear the table and help with the chinking," Eliza adds, her voice calm but firm. "We can't afford drafts today." Abigail moves quickly, stacking bowls in a wooden crate, her hands already reaching for the quilted window coverings to check their seals. The younger children, Lucy and Samuel, huddle closer to the stove, their small faces peeking from blankets as Rose, the infant, coos softly in Eliz's arms. The cabin, though warming, is a patchwork of defenses against the cold, every log and rag a soldier in their war against the elements. Caleb follows James out the door, the blast of frigid air hitting him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and icing his eyelashes in seconds. The world outside is a stark, frozen expanse, the Wyoming plains stretching endlessly under a sky turning grey with the threat of snow. The snow underfoot squeaks with each step, a dry, powdery sound that signals low moisture, meaning more work to melt it for water. James leads the way to the woodlot, 100 yards from the cabin, where a stack of logs waits under a tarp, protected from the elements. The sled, a sturdy frame of oak and rawhide, sits nearby, its runners polished by countless trips through the snow. "Grab the saw," James says, pointing to the shed where tools hang in meticulous order. Caleb retrieves the two-man saw, its blade gleaming faintly despite the dim light, and slings it over his shoulder, the weight familiar but heavy. They move in silence, their breaths puffing in clouds, the cold so deep it feels like it's pressing against their bones. At the woodlot, James kneels to inspect the stack, his gloved hands brushing snow from the tarp to reveal logs cut last spring, seasoned through summer to burn clean and hot. "Oak mostly," he mutters, "good for the day fire, but we'll need hickory for the night." Caleb nods, knowing the difference oak burns steady, reliable, while hickory's dense grain holds heat through the long, dark hours. James selects a log, rolling it free with a practiced shove, and positions it on the cutting block. "Take the other end," he says, and Caleb grips the saw's handle, the wood smooth against his mittens. They begin, the saw's teeth biting into the log with a rhythmic rasp, the sound sharp in the still air. Each pull is a dance of coordination, Caleb matching his father's pace, their movements synchronized to conserve energy. The work warms them, sweat beading under their layers despite the cold, a reminder that survival demands both effort and precision. Back in the cabin, Eliza and Abigail are waging their own battle against the cold. Eliza kneels by the north wall, her fingers tracing the chinking, a mixture of clay, ash, and horsehair packed between the logs to seal out drafts. She finds a soft spot, the clay crumbling under her touch, and frowns. "This won't hold," she says, her breath visible even in the cabin's relative warmth. Abigail, fetch the chinking bucket. Abigail moves to the corner where a wooden pail sits, filled with a fresh batch of chinking mixed yesterday, its surface crusted from the cold. She carries it to her mother, who scoops a handful and presses it into the gap, her hands steady despite the chill. The chinking is their first line of defense, a barrier that turns the cabin's rough logs into a near-impervious wall. Eliz's fingers work quickly, smoothing the mixture, ensuring no air seeps through. "This isn't just mud," she tells Abigail, "it's our shield." Abigail nods, her hands already busy checking the other walls, her eyes sharp for any sign of weakness. The cabin's design is no accident, every element a lesson learned from ancestors and neighbors, refined over decades of frontier winters. The logs, cut from pines felled in spring when sap was low, are stacked with precision, their ends notched to lock tight. Between them, the Caldwells have stuffed dried moss, a trick learned from Shoshone neighbors. Its fibrous texture trapping air and insulating better than clay alone. The walls are doubled in places, an outer layer of logs and an inner one, with moss packed thick between, creating a barrier that holds heat like a fortress. Eliza pauses, her hands coated in clay, and looks at the ceiling, where sod and timber form a roof heavy enough to withstand snow loads, but light enough not to collapse. We'll need to check the roof after the storm, she says. If it piles too high, it'll crush the beams. Abigail nods, her mind already on the next task, her hands moving to the windows, where quilts hang like tapestries, their edges stuffed with rags to block drafts. The oiled paper panes, translucent but sturdy, let in just enough light to work by, their surfaces glistening with frost that catches the firelight like stained glass. Back outside, Caleb and James have cut 3 logs, their arms aching but warm from the effort. The sled is half-loaded, its runners sinking slightly into the snow. James pauses, his eyes scanning the horizon where the sky is darkening. Clouds heavy with the promise of snow. Storms closer than I thought, he says, his voice low, maybe for hours now. Caleb feels a knot in his stomach, the weight of time pressing against them. They work faster, sawing another log, the sawdust piling like gold dust in the snow. Each cut is a calculation too many logs, and the sled becomes too heavy to pull to few, and they risk running out during the storm. James teaches as they work, his voice steady but instructive. Look at the grain, Caleb, he says, pointing to a log's end. Tight rings mean it's dry, burns hotter. Loose rings and it's green, smokes like hell. Caleb nods, filing the knowledge away, knowing it's not just about today's fire, but about surviving the winter. They stack the cut logs on the sled, securing them with rawhide straps, and begin the trek back to the cabin, the sled's weight pulling against their shoulders. The cold bites deeper now, the wind picking up, carrying tiny crystals of snow that sting their faces like needles. Inside, Eliza and Abigail have moved to the floor, where a gap near the door lets in a faint draft. Eliza kneels, packing snow against the base of the outer wall, a trick that uses the cold against itself, the snow freezing into a solid barrier that blocks wind better than wood alone. It's counterintuitive, Abigail says, her voice curious, using snow to keep warm. Eliza smiles faintly, her hands red from the cold. Snow's an insulator, she says, traps air like a quilt, keeps the wind out. Abigail nods, learning, her hands mimicking her mother's as they pack the snow tight, creating a low wall around the cabin's base. The technique, passed down from trappers who learned it from native guides, is one of many the Caldwells rely on, each method a thread in the tapestry of survival. Lucy and Samuel, now awake, are tasked with small jobs. Lucy sweeps the floor clear of ash and dust, keeping the area near the stove clean to avoid sparks, while Samuel stacks kindling sticks, his small hands careful to avoid splinters. Eliza watches them, her eyes soft but vigilant, knowing even the youngest must contribute. Rose, still in her cradle near the stove, kicks her feet, her warmth ensured by the stones Caleb placed earlier. The cabin is a hive of activity, each task interlocking, a system where no effort is wasted. The fire, now roaring, fills the room with a golden glow, the frost on the walls beginning to melt, dripping in tiny rivulets to the floor. Eliza notices, her brow furrowing. Too much melt, she says, we're burning too hot, wasting wood. She adjusts the damper, narrowing the airflow, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. Too much air and the fire consumes itself, too little and it chokes. It's a balance learned through years of winters, a balance that keeps the cabin livable without depleting their precious fuel. Abigail, check the stove's base, she says, we can't afford cracks. Abigail kneels, inspecting the iron for signs of stress, her fingers tracing the seams where cold and heat wage their silent war. Outside, James and Caleb reach the cabin, their sled piled high with logs. They stack them against the wall, under the eaves where snow won't bury them, each log placed with care to stay dry. James pauses, his breath heavy, his eyes on the sky. It's coming fast, he says, we'll need to bank the cabin before it hits. Caleb nods, knowing the task piling snow against the walls to insulate further, a job that's both exhausting and critical. They step inside, the warmth hitting them like a wave, their faces tingling as blood rushes back to their skin. Good haul? Eliza says, glancing at the sled through the window. but we're still short for a long storm. James nods, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cold he just left. We'll cut more tomorrow, he says, if the storm lets us. Caleb, help your mother with the snow banking. Caleb grabs the scoop again, his muscles protesting but moving on instinct. He steps back into the cold, the wind now carrying a low moan, a sign the storm is closing in. He begins scooping snow, piling it against the cabin's base, following the line Eliza started. The snow is light, almost fluffy, but heavy in volume. The whistle of the draft slices through the cabin's fragile warmth, a sharp reminder that the storm outside is no mere inconvenience, but a predator testing their defenses. Eliza's hands, already rough from years of frontier work, move swiftly to the chinking bucket, scooping a handful of the cold, gritty mixture of clay, ash, and horsehair. Caleb, stay by the stove and keep it steady, she says, her voice calm but edged with urgency. We can't lose the fire while we patch this. Caleb nods, his heart quickening as he kneels by the stove, the fire's glow reflecting in his eyes. Its heat a lifeline against the growing howl outside. James joins Eliza at the north wall, his fingers probing the gap where the chinking has crumbled, letting in a needle-thin stream of air so cold it feels like a blade. Abigail, bring the lamp, he calls, his breath clouding even inside the cabin. We need light to do this, right? Abigail hurries to the table where the oil lamp flickers, its flame trembling as the draft sneaks through. She adjusts the wick carefully, knowing every drop of oil is precious, and holds it steady near the wall, casting a soft glow over her parents' work. The storm's wind rattles the oiled paper windows, a low moan that seems to mock their efforts. But the Caldwells move with practiced precision, each motion a piece of a survival puzzle honed over years on the Wyoming frontier. Lucy and Samuel, huddled near the stove, watch wide-eyed, their small hands clutching blankets as Rose, the infant, stirs in her cradle, her soft whimpers drowned by the wind's growing fury. Eliza presses the chinking into the gap, her fingers working the mixture deep into the crevice, sealing it against the cold. James smooths it with a flat stick, ensuring no air can slip through, his movements deliberate, as if sculpting life itself. This gap's new, he mutters, must have cracked in last night's freeze. Eliza nods, her eyes scanning the wall for other weaknesses. We'll check every inch after this storm. The repair is small but critical, a reminder that their cabin, their fortress, is only as strong as its weakest point. Caleb, at the stove, adds a small oak log, careful to place it where the flames can lick its edges without smothering them. His father's lessons echoing in his mind. Too much wood and the fire chokes, too little and it fades, leaving them at the mercy of the cold. The fire crackles, its heat pushing back the chill near the stove, but the cabin's edges remain icy, the temperature gradient a stark map of their survival. Abigail sets the lamp down, her hands now free to help Eliza check the other walls, her fingers brushing over the rough logs, feeling for drafts. The cabin's interior, lit by firelight and the lamp's faint glow, reveals a world of contrasts. Frost sparkling on the walls, quilts hanging like battle flags, and the stove's iron bulk radiating warmth that feels like hope. The storm outside grows louder, snow now pelting the windows, each flake a tiny hammer against the oiled paper. James steps back from the wall, wiping his hands on his trousers. That'll hold for now, he says, but his eyes are on the door, where the wind's howl is louder, more insistent. We need to eat and prep the beds before it gets worse, Eliza says, her voice cutting through the tension. Abigail, get the stones heating again. Abigail moves to the pile of river stones near the stove, selecting for more, their smooth surfaces chosen for their ability to hold heat through the night. She places them carefully, not too close to the flames, her hands steady despite the growing noise outside. Caleb, check the woodpile inside, James says. We can't go out once the storm locks us in. Caleb moves to the corner where the indoor woodpile stands, a neat stack of oak and hickory, each log a testament to months of labor. He counts silently, his lips moving, 8 days worth, maybe 9 if we stretch it, he reports, his voice steady but tinged with worry. James nods, his face unreadable. We'll make it work, but we'll need to cut more after the storm. The words hang heavy, a reminder that survival is a chain of tasks, each one linked to the next, with no room for error. Eliza, at the stove, stirs the pot of melted snow, now warm enough for cooking, and begins preparing breakfast, a simple meal of cornmeal mush with a thin drizzle of molasses, the last of their sweet reserves. Every calorie counts, she murmurs, her eyes on the pot. We'll need strength for what's coming. Abigail sets the table, her movements quick, placing wooden bowls and spoons, each item worn but cherished, part of the family's survival kit. Lucy and Samuel, sensing the meal, inch closer, their blankets trailing like capes, their faces pale but eager. Rose, now awake, fusses softly, and Eliza lifts her from the cradle, wrapping her in a wool shawl before settling her near the stove's warmth. The family gathers, except James, who stands by the door, listening to the storm's crescendo, his hand on the latch as if testing its strength. It's a whiteout soon, he says, his voice low. Will be sealed in by noon. The words land like a weight, but the Caldwells don't pause, their routine unbroken, each task a defiance of the storm's power. Breakfast is eaten quickly, the mush warm but bland, the coffee weak but hot, its bitterness a small comfort. Caleb swallows his portion, the heat spreading through his chest, fueling him for the work ahead. James joins them, his bowl in hand, eating as he checks the stove's damper, adjusting it to conserve wood while maintaining heat. We'll need to bank the fire low during the storm, he says, keeps the cabin warm without burning through our stock. Eliza nods, her mind already on the next task. Heated stones for the beds, she says. Caleb, wrap the ones from this morning. They're cool now. Caleb moves to the stones he placed earlier, their warmth faded but still enough to feel through his mittens. He wraps each in cotton, then wool, then blanket scraps, tying them with twine, creating packets of heat that will warm the children's beds through the night. Lucy and Samuel watch, their eyes bright with curiosity, and Eliza assigns them small tasks. Lucy, fold the extra quilts. Samuel, sweep the ash from the stove's base. The children move eagerly, their contribution small but vital, part of the family's intricate survival dance. Abigail, finished with the table, joins Caleb at the stove, helping to position new stones for heating, her hands steady despite the cold that lingers near the walls. The cabin is a symphony of activity, each sound the crackle of the fire, the scrape of Eliza's spoon, the soft thud of Caleb's stones, blending with the storm's roar outside. The wind's howl is relentless now, shaking the cabin. The creak from the roof lingers in Caleb's ears, a haunting note beneath the storm's relentless howl as he adjusts the damper on the stove, his hands steady despite the unease knotting his stomach. The fire burns strong, its orange glow casting flickering shadows across the cabin, but the sound above, sharp and irregular, feels like a warning from the Wyoming frontier itself, a reminder that no defense is infallible. James stands by the door, his face etched with focus, listening to the wind's fury, the snow piling against the cabin like an enemy laying siege. Eliza, cradling Rose near the stove, glances upward, her eyes narrowing as another creak echoes. Softer this time, but no less ominous. We can't check the roof now, she says, her voice low to keep Lucy and Samuel calm. But we'll need to brace it if this keeps up. James nods, his jaw tight. We'll make a plan once the wind drops. For now, keep the fire steady and the beds warm. Abigail, her hands still wrapped around a heated stone, pauses, her eyes darting to the ceiling, where the sod and timber groan under the snow's weight. Caleb, you're on fire watch, James repeats, his voice firm. Don't let it falter. We're in for a long night. Caleb nods, his responsibility anchoring him. The fire's heat a fragile shield against the storm's assault. The cabin, though fortified with chinking, snow banking, and quilts, feels smaller now, its walls pressed inward by the blizzard's force, the air thick with the scent of burning oak and the faint tang of frost. Eliza sets Rose back in her cradle, tucking a warm stone at her feet, and turns to the supply chest, her hands moving with purpose as she pulls out a small sack of dried beans. We'll need a hot meal tonight, she says, something to stick to our ribs. Abigail joins her, fetching a pot to soak the beans, her movements quick but careful, every action a thread in the family's survival tapestry. Lucy and Samuel, their story about the fort forgotten, huddle closer to the stove, their blankets forming a cocoon around Scout, the dog, whose warmth adds to their own. The storm's roar is a constant now, a deep bellow that shakes the oiled paper windows, their frames rattling as snow buries the cabin deeper. Caleb watches the fire, his eyes tracking the flames dance, ensuring they neither flare to hot nor dwindle to low, his father's lessons guiding his hands. At a hickory log now, James says, stepping away from the door, "It'll burn slow. Keep us through till midnight." Caleb selects a dense, heavy log from the indoor pile. It's grain-tight and dark, and places it carefully, the flames curling around it like a caress. The fire's warmth pushes back the cold, but the cabin's edges remain icy, the frost on the walls glistening like a warning. Eliza, at the stove, pours the soaked beans into a pot of melted snow, adding a pinch of salt. The last of their precious store, her face a mask of concentration. "We'll eat in shifts," she says, "keeps the fire working for us, not against us." Abigail nods, her hands busy grinding a small portion of cornmeal for flatbread, the stone pestle scraping rhythmically against the mortar. The cabin is a hive of activity, each member locked in their role. The storm's fury a backdrop that sharpens their focus. But the roof creaks again, louder, and James's head snaps up, his eyes meeting Eliz's in a silent question. "It's holding," she says, her voice steady but her hands pausing. "We built it strong, but we'll need to clear it soon as we can." James nods, his mind already turning to the next task. "We'll need a ladder and ropes. Maybe a brace inside if it gets worse." The words hang heavy, a reminder that survival is a chain of decisions, each one a gamble against the storm's wrath. Caleb, at the stove, feels the weight of his role, the fire's steady burn his responsibility. Its heat the family's lifeline. He adjusts the damper, narrowing the airflow to conserve wood, his movements precise, his mind racing with the lessons James drilled into him. Airflow is everything. Too much and you waste fuel, too little and you choke the flame. The fire responds, settling into a steady glow, its heat spreading just enough to keep the cabin livable. Abigail, finished with the cornmeal, kneads the dough, her hands strong from years of frontier chores, shaping it into flat rounds to cook on the stove's surface. The scent of baking bread mingles with the beans' earthy aroma, a small comfort in the storm's chaos. Lucy and Samuel, sensing the shift, perk up, their hunger sharpening as the food's promise fills the air. "Can we eat soon?" Lucy asks, her voice small but hopeful. "Soon," Eliza says, her smile a flicker of warmth. "We'll eat and then get you to bed, warm and safe." The words are a promise, a vow to keep the cold at bay. But the roof's creak interrupts again, a sharp crack that makes everyone freeze. James moves to the center of the cabin, his eyes scanning the ceiling, his hands reaching up to touch the beams, feeling for vibration. "It's the snow's weight," he says, "piling faster than I thought. We'll need to act tonight if it doesn't let up." Eliza nods, her hands still on the pot. "We'll make a shelter under the table if it comes to that. Keep everyone warm." The idea, born from stories of past winters, is a last resort, a way to conserve heat if the fire or roof fails. Quilts and blankets forming a tent-like cocoon where body heat becomes their defense. Caleb's heart quickens, the thought of huddling under the table both strange and urgent, a testament to how close they skirt disaster. Abigail, sensing the tension, starts humming softly, a tune from their last community gathering, her voice a quiet anchor in the storm's roar. Lucy joins in, her small voice wobbly but brave, and Samuel taps his foot, his blanket slipping as he sways. Eliza smiles, her hands stirring the beans, the rhythm of their work unbroken despite the roof's warning. James, still by the beams, pulls a chair to stand on, his hands probing higher, feeling for cracks or shifts in the timber. "It's solid," he says, "but we can't take chances. Caleb, help me fetch the spare planks." Caleb moves to the corner where a small stack of seasoned wood, not for burning, but for repairs, waits under a cloth. He hands James a plank, its surface rough but sturdy, cut from a pine felled last spring. They lean it against the wall, ready for emergency bracing, a precaution that feels like a prayer against the storm's power. The fire, Caleb's charge, holds steady, but a sudden gust shakes the cabin, the wind finding a new gap, a faint whistle near the door. Eliz's head snaps up, her hands pausing. Another draft, she says, "We can't let it in." Abigail grabs the chinking bucket, her movements swift, and kneels by the door, her fingers finding the gap where cold air seeps like a thief. She packs the clay mixture tight, her hands cold but steady, sealing the breach as the wind howls in protest. The cabin, though battered, holds its walls a testament to the Caldwell's foresight. Every log, every chink, every quilt a piece of their survival system. James steps down from the chair, his face grim but resolute. We'll eat, then set up the shelter. He says, if the roof gives, we'll be ready. Eliza nods, her hands ladling beans into bowls, the flatbread steaming beside them. The family gathers, their meal a brief pause in the storm's assault. Each bite of fuel for the work ahead. Caleb eats quickly, his eyes on the fire, knowing his watch will stretch into the night. The beans are hearty, the bread warm, but the portions are small. A reminder of their dwindling supplies. We'll stretch it, Eliza says, her voice firm. We always do. The words are a mantra, a defiance of hunger and cold. But the roof creaks again, louder, and James sets his bowl down, his eyes on the ceiling. We'll need to move fast, he says. Caleb, Abigail, help me with the quilts. They rise, leaving their meal half-eaten, and pull quilts from the beds, their hands working in unison to drape them over the table, creating a low, tent-like structure. Eliza brings Rose, tucking her inside with Lucy and Samuel, their blankets forming a nest within the shelter. Scout, the dog, curls up beside them, his warmth a small but vital addition. The shelter is cramped but warm, the quilts trapping body heat. A technique learned from winters past when cabins failed and families survived by huddling together. Caleb, back at the stove, adds another hickory log, his hand steady but his mind on the roof. The creak's now a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat counting down. James and Abigail secure the quilts, tying them with twine to the table's legs, ensuring no gaps let in the cold. The storm's roar is deafening now, the cabin shaking as snow piles higher. The wind a living force that tests every seam. Eliza, her hands free, checks the stove, her eyes on the fire's color, ensuring Caleb's work holds. Good job, she says, her voice a rare praise. Keep it steady, we're counting on you. Caleb nods, pride swelling despite the fear, his role as firekeeper a badge of trust. The shelter is ready, a fortress within a fortress, and the family tests it, crawling inside to check its warmth. It's tight, Lucy says, her voice muffled by quilts, but it's warm. Samuel nods, his small hand petting Scout, who pants softly, adding to the heat. Rose, nestled in Liz's arms, sleeps soundly, her tiny breaths a counterpoint to the storm's chaos. James crawls out, his eyes on the ceiling. We'll stay here tonight if the roof gets worse, he says. But we'll keep the fire going, no matter what. The words are a vow, a promise to fight the storm with every tool they have. But as they settle into the shelter, the fire's glow casting shadows through the quilts. A new sound cuts through, a sharp crack from the stove itself, not the roof. Caleb's heart stops, his eyes snapping to the iron bulk, where a faint line of smoke seeps from a seam. The stove, their lifeline, is failing, and the storm shows no sign of stopping, pulling them deeper into a crisis that tests not just their shelter, but the very heart of their survival. The faint glow of dawn creeps through the oiled paper windows, softening the cabin's shadows as the storm's roar dulls to a low moan, a sign that the blizzard's grip on the Wyoming frontier is loosening. Caleb, still at the stove, his hands steady on the damper, watches the fire's steady burn, the clay patch on the cracked seam holding firm but reminding him of their fragility. The hickory log he added hours ago glows deep red, its heat a lifeline that has kept the Caldwells alive through the night's worst. James, standing by the door, cracks it open, a blast of cold air rushing in, carrying a swirl of snow that melts instantly on the warm floor. It's easing, he says, his voice rough from a sleepless night. We'll check the roof, then head to the Turners before the next wave hits. Eliza, cradling Rose near the stove, nods, her face etched with determination. We'll pack what we can, they'll need wood and know-how. Abigail, emerging from the quilted shelter under the table, brushes ash from her hands, her eyes meeting Caleb's in a shared resolve to help their neighbors. Lucy and Samuel, stirring in the shelter with Scout, the dog, peek out, their faces pale but curious, sensing the shift in the air. The cabin, though battered, stands strong, its chinked walls, snow-banked base, and fire-warmed heart a testament to the family's ingenuity. But the Turners' poorly built cabin, A mile through the snow looms in their minds a challenge as urgent as their own survival. James steps outside, his boots crunching in the fresh snow now piled waist-high against the cabin, the air biting but no longer a blade against his skin. Caleb follows, his scarf tight around his face, his mittens stiff from last night's work. The sky is still grey, heavy with clouds, but the wind has dropped, leaving an eerie quiet broken only by the distant creak of pines bending under snow. "The roof's our first job," James says, grabbing a ladder from the shed, its rungs icy but sturdy. Caleb helps position it against the cabin's north side, where the snow's weight presses heaviest, the creaks from last night echoing in his memory. James climbs, his movements careful, testing each rung for ice, while Caleb steadies the ladder. His hands numb but firm. At the top, James brushes snow from the sod roof, revealing the timber beams beneath. Solid but strained. It's holding. He calls down, but we'll need to brace it inside. Clear some of this snow to ease the load. Caleb nods, his breath clouding, knowing the task will burn precious energy but save their home. They work quickly, James shoveling snow with a flat board, Caleb hauling it away in a bucket. Their movements a silent rhythm honed by years of frontier chores. The snow is heavy, wetter than yesterday's powder, a sign the storm's end is near, but another could follow. Inside, Eliza prepares for the trek to the Turners, her hands sorting supplies with surgical precision, a small sack of cornmeal, a handful of dried meat, a few heated stones wrapped in wool. "We can't give much," she says to Abigail, "but we'll teach them to stretch it." Abigail nods, her hands packing the sled, adding a bundle of kindling, pine shavings, and a spare quilt, each item a lifeline for the Turners' struggling family. Lucy and Samuel, now out of the shelter, help with small tasks. Lucy folding blankets to free up space, Samuel counting kindling sticks, his small voice steady as he reports 20 enough for a day. Eliza smiles, her pride a quiet warmth, knowing every hand matters. Rose, in her cradle, cooed softly, her warmth ensured by the stones Abigail placed earlier. Her presence a reminder of why they fight. The cabin hums with purpose, the fire's crackle blending with the soft scrape of Eliz's packing, the thud of snow from the roof, and the storm's fading growl outside. James and Caleb finish clearing the roof's heaviest snow, easing the beam's strain, and climb down. Their faces red from cold but satisfied. "It'll hold," James says, "but we'll brace it tonight, no chances." They step inside, the warmth hitting them like a wave, their coats steaming as frost melts. Eliza hands James a cup of weak coffee, her eyes on the sled. "You'll need to move fast," she says. "The Turners might not have fire left." The words land heavy, the image of a cold cabin, its family shivering, spurring them forward. "Caleb, you're with me," James says. "We'll take the sled, show them how to manage their fire and bank their walls." Caleb nods, his heart racing with purpose, the responsibility of saving neighbors as weighty as tending the fire. "Abigail, stay with your mother," James adds, "keep the stove steady and prep for our return." Abigail agrees, her hands already on the damper, her confidence growing with each task. The family's roles are clear, a machine of survival, each part interlocking, their strength in unity. James and Caleb bundle up, their coats heavy with frost, their scarves tight against the lingering wind. They pull the sled, loaded with supplies, through the snow. The path to the Turners' cabin a faint trail buried under fresh drifts. The air is cold, maybe 20 below, but the storm's lull makes it bearable. The sky lightening as dawn strengthens. The trek is slow, the sled's runners catching on hidden roots, the snow dragging at their boots. But James sets a steady pace, his eyes scanning for landmarks, a bent pine, a frozen creek, signs of the Turners' claim. Caleb follows, his mind on the family they're helping, their faces vivid from a summer visit. Young John Turner, barely 25, his wife Mary, and their 2 children, Sarah and Ben, both under 5. Their cabin, thrown up hastily last fall, was a patchwork of green logs and poor chinking, a novice's mistake that could cost them their lives. They don't know the fire's tricks, James says, his voice muffled by his scarf. "Will show them. Give them a fighting chance." Caleb nods, his breath clouding, his hands gripping the sled's rope, the weight a reminder of their mission. Back at the cabin, Eliza and Abigail work in tandem, Eliza tending the stove, her eyes on the clay patch, Abigail checking the walls for new drafts. The roof's creaks have stopped, a relief, but the stove's fragility keeps them vigilant. We'll need more chinking mix, Eliza says, her hands stirring a new batch. Clay and ash blending into a thick paste. Abigail nods, her hands busy with the heated stones, wrapping them for the night's beds. Her movements swift but precise. Lucy and Samuel, tasked with keeping the floor clear, sweep ash and dust. Their small efforts part of the family's rhythm. Scout, curled near the stove, adds his warmth. His presence a comfort as the cabin holds against the cold. Eliza pauses, her eyes on the window, where the light is brighter now, the storm's end in sight. They'll be at the Turners soon, she says, her voice soft. We'll need to prep for their return. Maybe heat extra water. Abigail agrees, her mind on Caleb and James, braving the snow for others. A frontier ethic she's grown to understand. The Turners' cabin comes into view, a low, crooked structure half buried in snow. Its chimney barely smoking, a sign of trouble. James knocks, his fist loud against the frozen door, and John Turner opens it, his face pale. His eyes hollow. Thank God, he says, his voice cracking. We're burning the last of our wood. Murray's got the kids under blankets, but it's cold. James steps inside, Caleb behind him, the sled parked outside. The Turners' cabin is a stark contrast to their own. Its walls leaking air, the floor icy. The fire in their small stove weak and smoky. Murray, wrapped in a shawl, holds Sarah and Ben close, their faces pinched with cold. We didn't know it'd be this bad, John says, his hands trembling. We thought we had enough wood. James nods, his face calm but firm. We'll fix it, show you how to keep the fire and insulate. Caleb unloads the sled, bringing in the kindling, cornmeal and quilt, his hands steady despite the chill. James kneels by the stove, inspecting its fire. Too much green wood, he says. It's choking, you need dry oak for day, hickory for night. He rearranges the logs, adding pine shavings from their sack and blows gently, coaxing the flames back to life. The fire responds, its glow spreading, and John watches, his eyes wide with learning. Caleb, show them snow banking, James says, and Caleb steps outside with John, explaining how to pack snow against the cabin's base, creating a barrier that traps heat. It's like a quilt for your walls, Caleb says, echoing Eliz's words, keeps the wind out. John nods, his hands clumsy but eager, piling snow as Caleb demonstrates, the work warming them both. Inside, James teaches Mary to adjust the damper, control the airflow, make the fire burn hot but slow. You're wasting heat, he says, pointing to the stove's open vent. Close it like this. Let the fire breathe easy. Mary listens, her hands mimicking his, her face brightening as the cabin warms. The children, Sarah and Ben, creep closer to the stove, their blankets trailing, their eyes on the growing flames. Caleb and John finish banking the snow, the cabin's base now sealed, a small but vital improvement. They return inside, the warmth hitting them like a promise, the fire now steady, the room less frigid. James hands Mary the quilt. Hang this on the worst wall, he says. It'll block drafts till you can chink properly. Mary nods, her gratitude silent but deep, her hands tying the quilt to a beam. Caleb adds their kindling to the Turner's pile, showing John how to stack it near the stove to stay dry. Oak for day, hickory for night, he says, repeating James's lesson, pine for starting, but sparingly. John nods, his confidence growing, his fear easing as knowledge takes root. The Caldwell's supplies, though sparse, are a lifeline, the cornmeal enough for a few meals. The heated stones a trick Mary hadn't known. Wrap them like this, James says, showing her the wool and blanket layers, put them in the beds. Keeps the kids warm. Mary nods, her hands learning fast, her eyes on her children, who now sit closer to the fire, their faces less pinched. The Turner's cabin, though still rough, feels livable now, its fire-struck. The warmth of the Caldwell cabin envelops James and Caleb as they step inside, their boots shedding clumps of snow that melt into small pools on the plank floor. The sled parked under the eaves to shield it from the storm's lingering flakes. Abigail, tending the stove with a steady hand, looks up, her eyes bright with relief as the fire's glow reflects off the frost-kissed walls. The clay patch on the stove seems holding firm, a testament to their desperate repair. Eliza, stirring a pot of melted snow, pauses, her gaze shifting from the stove to her husband. And son, her voice calm but eager for news. "How are the Turners?" James shrugs off his coat, its edges crusted with ice, and hangs it near the stove to dry. "They're holding now," he says. "We got their fire steady, showed them snow banking and damper tricks, gave them enough to last a few days." Caleb nods, his scarf still tight around his face, his hands numb but his chest warm with the pride of helping neighbors. "We left them a quilt and some cornmeal," he adds. John's learning fast. Eliz's face softens, a rare smile breaking through her fatigue. "Good," she says, her hands resuming their work. "We'll check on them again when the snow settles." Lucy and Samuel, nestled in the quilted shelter under the table with Scout, peek out, their faces curious, their blankets trailing as they crawl closer to the stove's warmth. Rose in her cradle coos softly, her tiny form cocooned in wool, warmed by the stones Abigail placed earlier. The cabin, though battered by the storm, stands resolute, its chinked walls and snow-banked base a fortress against the Wyoming frontier's wrath. But the memory of the Turners' cold, leaky cabin lingers, a reminder of how thin the line is between survival and disaster. James kneels by the stove, checking the clay patch, his fingers tracing the seam. "It's holding," he says, "but we'll need to smelt a proper fix when we can get to town." Eliza nods, her eyes on the pot. "We're low on everything," she says quietly. "Beans, cornmeal, oil. We'll stretch it, but the Turners took the last of our extra." Abigail, adjusting the damper, glances up, her voice steady. "We did what we had to. They'd do the same for us." The words echo the frontier's unspoken code, a bond forged in shared hardship, where helping a neighbor is as vital as tending your own fire. Caleb, warming his hands by the stove, feels the weight of that bond, his mind replaying John Turner's grateful grip, Mary's relieved smile as their cabin warmed. The storm outside has quieted to a soft whisper, the snow falling lighter now, the sky brightening with a promise of clear weather. But James's eyes are on the window, wary of another wave. "We've got a day, maybe two, before the next storm," he says. "We'll use it to prep for the gathering at the Hendersons." The mention of the gathering sparks a shift in the cabin, a flicker of anticipation cutting through the fatigue. The Hendersons, a family with a larger cabin 2 miles east, host a winter gathering each year, a rare chance for the scattered families of the Wyoming plains to share food stories and survival knowledge, a lifeline as crucial as firewood. Eliza nods, her hands already sorting supplies. "We'll bring what we can," she says. "Maybe a pot of beans, some flatbread if the cornmeal holds." Abigail, her hands busy wrapping a cooled stone, adds, "I can spin wool with the Henderson girls. Trade for some of their dried apples." Lucy and Samuel perk up, their eyes bright. "A fiddle," Samuel says, his voice eager. "Mister." Henderson plays the fiddle. The thought of music, warmth, and shared meals lifts the cabin's mood, a beacon of hope after the storm's ordeal. Caleb, still by the stove, feels a stir of excitement, his mind flashing to last year's gathering. The laughter, the stories, the warmth of a room full of survivors. But the journey to the Hendersons isn't without risk. The path is snow-choked, and another storm could trap them. James, sensing the shift, plans aloud. "We'll take the sled," he says. "Bundle up tight. Move at first light to beat any weather." Caleb nods, his role clear. "I'll check the sled's runners, make sure they're smooth." The family slips into a familiar rhythm, each member preparing for the trek, their tusks interlocking like the logs of their cabin. Eliza packs a small sack of beans and cornmeal, her hands careful to measure just enough, leaving reserves for their return. Abigail folds quilts, selecting the lightest for the journey, their warmth a shield against the cold. Lucy and Samuel, tasked with small jobs, gather twine and a spare lampwick, their hands eager to contribute. Scout, sensing the activity, wags his tail, his shaggy fur a promise of added warmth on the trek. The cabin hums with purpose, the fire's crackle blending with the soft scrape of packing, the rustle of quilts and the occasional creak of the roof, now silent but a reminder of their vulnerability. As dawn strengthens, the family eats a sparse breakfast, cornmeal mush without molasses, the last of it given to the Turners, each bite a calculated fuel for the day ahead. James, standing by the door, checks the sky. "It's clear for now," he says, "but we'll need to move fast. The Hendersons expect us by noon." Caleb, his stomach full but his mind on the journey, helps load the sled. Tying down the sack of food, a bundle of kindling, and a quilt with practiced knots. Eliza, wrapping Rose in layers of wool, tucks a heated stone at her feet. Her face set with determination will keep her warm, she says, no matter what. Abigail, her shawl tight around her shoulders, checks the stove one last time. The fire low but steady, the clay patch still holding. We'll bank it down, she says, keep it alive till we're back. The family steps outside, the air cold but softer than yesterday's bite. The snow glittering under a weak sun. The sled glides smoothly, its runners polished by Caleb's work, and James leads the way, his boots crunching a path through the drifts. Caleb follows, pulling the sled, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of weather. The Turner's gratitude still warm in his chest. Eliza, carrying Rose, walks beside Abigail, their steps synchronized, their breaths clouding in the crisp air. Lucy and Samuel, bundled in coats and scarves, trail behind, their excitement for the gathering tempered by the cold. Scout bounds ahead, his paws kicking up snow, his presence a small comfort in the vast, frozen plain. The path to the Hendersons is familiar but treacherous, the snow hiding roots and rocks, the wind carrying a faint chill that hints at another storm. Halfway there, a gust sweeps across the plain, stronger than expected, and James pauses. His eyes narrowing when not clear yet, he says, we'll need shelter if it picks up. Caleb's heart quickens, his mind flashing to a lined shack, an abandoned outpost a quarter-mile off, used by trappers and hunters in years past. He points to a faint outline in the snow there. He says, we can wait it out if it gets bad. James nods, his face grim. Good eye, let's keep moving, but be ready to divert. The wind grows, snow swirling around them, not a full blizzard but enough to sting their faces. And the family quickens their pace, the sled's weight pulling at Caleb's shoulders. The lined shack looms closer, its weathered logs barely visible through the snow. And James makes the call, we'll stop, he says, get a fire going, wait for the wind to drop. They reach the shack, its door frozen shut, requiring James's shoulder to force it open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air is cold, the floor littered with dust and old straw, but the walls are solid, a temporary refuge. Caleb unloads the kindling, his hands steady as he builds a small fire in the shack's rusted stove, using a single match from James's pressure supply. The flame catches, its glow a spark of hope, and James nods. Good work, he says, you're learning fast. The family huddles around the fire, their breaths visible in the dim light, the quilts draped over their shoulders like armor. Eliza feeds Rose, her hands careful to keep the infant warm, while Abigail distributes flatbread. It's crust tough but sustaining. Lucy and Samuel, their excitement undimmed, whisper about the gathering, their voices a soft hum against the wind's moan. The fire grows, warming the shack, its heat a reminder of the Caldwell's skill, their ability to carve survival from the harshest conditions. The wind eases after an hour, the snow falling lighter, and James checks the sky. We're clear for now, he says. Let's move, the Hendersons are waiting. They repack the sled, douse the fire, and step back into the cold, the path to the Hendersons now clear under a brightening sky. The Henderson cabin appears, larger than the Caldwell's, its chimney smoking strong, a beacon of warmth and community. The door swings open and Amos Henderson, a broad man with a graying beard, greets them, his voice booming, you made it, come in, warm up. Inside, the cabin is alive with faces, the Hendersons, the Millers, the Clarks. A dozen families gathered around a long table, the air thick with the scent of stew, bread, and burning hickory. Fiddles hum in the corner, children laugh and voices overlap, sharing stories of storms survived, crops planted and winters endured. Eliza sets a pot of beans on the table, a small offering but welcomed, while Abigail joins the Henderson girls, their hands busy spinning wool, trading techniques for tighter threads. Caleb, his hands still tingling from the cold, helps James stack their kindling near the stove, their contribution to the communal fire. Lucy and Samuel, freed from their scarves, chase the Henderson children, their laughter a rare joy. Rose, in Liz's arms, babbles, her warmth ensured by the cabin's heat. The gathering is a tapestry of survival, each family sharing what they know, pemmican recipes, chinking mixes, fire-starting tricks passed down like heirlooms. James talks with Amos, their voices low, discussing snow loads and stove repairs, while Eliza shares her heated stone method with Mrs. Tark. As the Caldwells trudge home through the Wyoming snow, the sled's runners gliding smoothly behind them, the faint glow of their cabin's chimney rises, like a beacon against the darkening sky, a promise of warmth and safety earned through their relentless grit. The storm's lull holds, the air sharp but still. The world around them a frozen canvas painted with the tracks of their journey. To the Turners' struggling cabin, to the Line Shack's fleeting refuge, to the Henderson gathering's vibrant warmth. Caleb, pulling the sled, feels the weight of the day in his shoulders but a fire in his chest, not just from the effort but from the knowledge they've shared, the lives they've touched, the legacy they're weaving. The cabin door opens and Eliza, carrying Rose, steps inside first, the stove's glow greeting them, its clay patch still holding, the fire a steady pulse that has carried them through the storm's worst. James, shaking snow from his coat, checks the beams, their silence of victory over the roof's earlier creaks. Abigail, her hands steady from hours of tending the fire, adds a hickory log, its dense grain promising hours of heat, her face lit with quiet pride. Lucy and Samuel, shedding their scarves, curl up near Scout, their laughter from the gathering still echoing, their small hands clutching, the dried apples gifted by the Hendersons. The cabin, though small, feels vast with the strength of their survival, every log, every quilt. Every heated stone a testament to their ingenuity, a fortress built not just of wood and clay, but of knowledge passed down and shared. The Turners' gratitude, the Henderson gathering's warmth, the Line Shack's fleeting fire, all weave into a story larger than one family, a tapestry of resilience that stretches across the Wyoming frontier, binding neighbors in a fight against the cold. Caleb, settling by the stove, his eyes on the flames, feels the weight of their journey. Not just the miles through snow, but the lessons carved into his memory. Fire management, snowbanking, community bonds, each a tool as vital as an axe or a saw. Eliza, tucking Rose into her cradle, looks at her family, her voice soft but firm. We made it through, she says, and we'll make it through. What's next? Together. James nods, his hand on the doorframe, his eyes on the horizon where stars pierce the twilight. We'll check the Turners tomorrow, make sure they're holding, he says, his words a vow to the frontier's code. Abigail, wrapping a cooled stone for the night, adds, we'll teach them more, make them stronger. Her confidence a spark of the future. The cabin settles into a quiet rhythm. The fires crackle a lullaby, the family's tasks winding down. Their survival system a well-oiled machine that has carried them through the storm and into the promise of another dawn. But this isn't just a story of one family, one storm, one gathering. It's a window into the unbreakable spirit of the frontier, where every spark, every chink, every shared meal is a defiance of nature's wrath. On the Wyoming plains of 1876, survival wasn't just about fire or walls. It was about the wisdom woven through generations, the courage to face the cold, the strength to lift a neighbor from despair. The Caldwells' story, their fire-tending rituals, their snowbank cabin, their trek to save the Turners, their gathering with the Hendersons is a testament to that wisdom, a legacy that burns brighter than any flame. And it's not over. The frontier holds more stories, more secrets, more battles won through grit and ingenuity, waiting to be uncovered. So, as the Caldwells huddle in their cabin, the fires glow a shield against the night. We invite you to carry their story with you, to see the frontier's lessons in your own challenges, to find strength in the bonds that hold us together. This is History Orbit, where the past isn't just a story, it's a fire that lights our way forward. If the Caldwells' resilience moved you, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment with the survival trick that amazed you most. Maybe it's the snow banking, the heated stones, or the community that turned strangers into kin. Share your city and time right now. Let us know you're part of this journey. The frontier has more to teach us, from the ingenious tools of trappers to the bold innovations of settlers, carving homes from wilderness, and we're diving deeper in our next video. Stay with us. Keep orbiting history, because the stories of our ancestors are still burning, waiting for you to discover their light.